Okay, let's do a little look in here. I'm gonna give you a little view of what we're doing. Started out here, right in the corner of the field. That there needs to go right here in the corner of the field. Started out, put the top dry right here, wet bin right here, storage bin here, future storage bin there. And what I put together was receiving also reclaims top dry and wet bin back to elevator. This storage bin, the unload would need a jump auger to go from the unload up to the elevator. This new bin would need a future bin. You would either put a jump auger back to the elevator or conveyor back to the elevator. Could run a conveyor back to the elevator here, catch that unload, and in the future extend it to add another bin, if that would ever happen. This is looking at long term. With this setup, we would have our, I'm not sure what all the plan is, so this is just looking at long term. We would have 2 hopper bins here that the grain gets reclaimed. You put corn in one, beans in the other, and the one bin would feed a hammer mill in here. This is a container roaster system. The one bin would feed the hammer mill, the other bin would feed the roaster. Roaster would go through the system here and dump into the other hammer mill, which would put it up here. 2 bins. This is my first layout of this site, so this would be how it is. You have your 2 meal bins, corn meal, roasted bean meal. We would have fluidizers on these bins, that way the stuff flows properly. It shows I have my mixer truck parked under those augers, as normally I like to dump straight in the mixer out of a meal bin. Although with this layout, when we look at traffic flow, we would probably be loading this into like a belt trailer, or you would probably be loading it into a belt trailer, hauling it over, putting it in the commodity shed. As I got to looking at traffic flow, thinking about that, I looked at, okay, we have our grain trucks coming in here, coming across the unload, coming right off the road, coming across the unload, going out around here. Feed truck or belt trailer coming over, loading meal, hauling it to the commodity shed. And myself, that's a very doable situation, but I always like to think, well, what are we going to want to do 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road? And with this setup, we're kind of somewhat limited. Traffic flow goes through the whole farmyard. The meal, all your grain will be hauled into this facility, and then you'll have to haul your feed out every week or so. You're going to be hauling your feed out to haul it over to the feed sender over here. So my first thought was, I drew this up and then I'm like, well, what if you would want, this is going to be really packed in a container to have a Model 18, any corn grinding system in this container. It's going to be really tight quarters, but doable. But I don't know what the thoughts are for the next 15 years, so I always like to figure for expansion. So from this design, I decided to make a little changes. So here, this is very similar design. This one here has the hopper bins alongside the container here. and the container setting in here. Then I went over here and I put a building in instead, and put a building in and said, you know what, a 54 by 16 foot building. Now we have plenty of room for a hammer mill. We have room for 2 roasters, and it's kind of a nice setup. Even if you ever go to the second roaster, you have the ability, or you have nice room in here for future roasters. Once I got done with this design, for if this is for sure where you want to put the facility, looking at I like this facility, but the traffic flow I don't really like for long term, and the limited designability of this facility, limited expansion. So I got the idea that I started looking at what your traffic is, where your scale is. If you're going to be unloading stuff you want to weigh first, you're going to be going across your scale back through here, coming across your unload. So I said, well, here we're out of this irrigation pivot area, which will actually restrict it some as we expand on how far over that pivot can go. But I looked in here and said, well, there's a corner here that we may not affect the pivot if we set in here between these 2 driveways. So we can have the grain trucks pull off along the road, across here, unload, back on the road again. They come back on the road, they could come through here, out around, well, they'd have to go out around here and across the scales, or in across the scales, out around and across the unload. How far this moved up and down, I didn't put a lot into that. With this here, the mixer truck may be able to come through, swing over here, get cornmeal and bean meal. Now, bear with me on that, because at this design it does not look like a big benefit to have your mixer truck be able to load over here. But wait till I go to the 3rd design. So after I had this all laid out, then I said, well, now I got my traffic flows better, or I think a little better, but for long term. But I don't think we're utilizing everything the way I would like. So I redid it, and I went over here. Now what you're seeing here is just to show expansion. We'll get rid of that. And now what you're seeing here is I moved the wet bin away from here. I moved the wet bin to the other side of the conveyor. I moved the top dry back here. I put the storage bin here and the future storage bin here. And we would reclaim from here back to here. We can, I think this will get it. There. We would reclaim from this bin back here with the conveyor, or this bin could set back here. It would, if setting here, we'd convey off the top of this storage bin back there, or we could set that bin right behind here to convey front, and convey again off the top of storage bin or top dry to the top of that bin. Now this is a 68-foot bin to hold 200,000 bushel. That's what the design is shown. Now I don't show spouts or top conveyance here. I just show the basic equipment layout. There's a lot of details missing. But with this, my idea here is some of these bin designs are wrong, but I want to come up with a plan for layout, which design we want to go with, and then I'll get into all the details. But with this design, my theory is for 15 years down the road, you have your grain unloading here, which is just alongside the road. We could push this back off the road a little bit, or there'd be two ways we can do it. We can bring this system out a little closer to the road, so this feed truck is loading closer to the road, and bring our grain trucks around the back. That way they're coming more straight off the road, like line this drive up with this, come in around the back here, and then come out to the road. That way they can go either way when they pull out the lane, which actually that might be the best bet. And the reason that I put the move this stuff closer is in the future, like we can start out now with one or two of these hopper bins and one or two of these hopper bins, but in the future we can set our commodity bins here and fill them with the elevators. So commodities can be received with this conveyance that we're buying anyhow for grain, and we could receive our commodities with that. And when this truck pulls over here, he uses a remote to run the augers filling the truck. We put 10-inch augers with reduced pitch flight on the intake, and have fluidizers in the bins to make the product fill the augers better, and we could receive grain, all our commodities, into a hopper with a hopper trailer if needed. We can usually buy commodities a little cheaper that way, and if you already own the elevator, then we can utilize that for commodities, and now it's more utilized investment this way. And we still hit our 3 bins and convey to our storage. We just have a little different layout. So what we want to look at here is what is the final design dream? Do we want to be here or do we want to be here? Long term, 15 years down the road. And then once we decide where we're going, then we can decide what for layout to do. I mean, if we are going here, if we would say we're going to go here, then we would probably I would recommend doing the design to do commodities. Not sure how much out of the way it would be. Like if the feed truck's coming from through here, he stops, loads his forages, comes over here, pulls through, gets his commodities, and then comes around here and goes and feeds the cows. That is what I'm picturing, but at the same time, I'm not sure on 100% on your traffic flow, but I like this as a better traffic flow. These augers are not out of detail. There would have to be some changes made in there. I will clean that all up once we decide where we're going with the facility and what our dream is. Is our facility going down here and we are never going to do commodities at it, or is our facility going over here and a possibility of commodities? And this is not something that, yes, we're doing commodities receiving and all of this next year. This is so that we have the drying bin, the storage bin, and the wet bin set at the right spot, so that way when we want to do commodities, when we want to do roasting, everything is where we want it, where we don't have to move stuff. This layout here would be very easy to fill stuff with a transport auger before until you have the elevator. You set a transport auger in here, set a transport auger here when you're filling this bin, one over this way when you're filling this bin. So filling these 3 bins with a transport auger would work very well until the rest of the equipment's built. Then you'd have to put the elevator in before you do this equipment here. And yeah, this is the reason for deciding location. Make sure we have these first bins laid at the right spot, and then we get them built, and then we just do step by step. And I can break that all down into multiple steps of what it's going to look like with each step and measurements and everything. So I can very easily break this down into measurements as far as we start wanting to get distances of the center of these bins to know how far it's going to be center to center. And then we can throw it on a PDF file, and I can send the PDF file, which would have all the measurements, 2D type layout. That way you can lay the whole site out. So yeah, let's decide on location of where this is going, and then whether we'll be, let's decide on location on where it's going. Is it definitely going here, or is it going up there? If it's going here, then we can get these measurements to lay this out, and we can decide, like, are we doing a hopper, container, or a building? So yeah, it's I like the containers as far as they are simple to install. They're very easy to, the work on site is very simple with the container systems, but I like this layout better. We can have this so that there's enough room to get in here with a skid loader to your elevator. If you have trouble, we'd have to move these bins front a little bit, which would not be an issue. I'd recommend having room in there like that. So if we go here, I'm gonna lean towards a building for long term. If we go here, I'm going to lean towards this layout for possible future commodities here. So let me know your thoughts on location and design, and I will sharpen it up from there. I'll put details in and make sure we fully understand the flow of things.